WHIV LPFM in New Orleans. We are Radio Null HIV with programming. That's right, programming dedicated to human rights and social justice. WHIVFM.org. We honor independent voices. We are not a radio station with a mission. No, we are a mission with the radio station. End all wars. Welcome to COVID Noise Filter. This is the every other day, daily, hour-long show. We're so happy to have you here and to be either tuned in on WHIV or watching us through one of our various stream functions that we have ongoing. My name is Dr. Mark Allen Dery. Thank you again so much for tuning in and for being here. We're so happy to have folks on board and with us. Today, Doc Griggs either may be joining us late or not at all, as he is otherwise occupied, so I will be doing this show solo. I did prep a big show, lots of stuff to talk about. Please ask questions. Please feel free to interrupt if you're interested in jumping on and saying hello. I'm always happy to have folks join us as well as we do this show together. As you've heard me say a million times, our viewers and listeners are the smartest people on earth, and I think that all of y'all's contributions are amazing. Doc Griggs has been really, really busy lately, and it's been really hard to bring him on the show. But I did, because we didn't do a show on Wednesday, I really wanted to make sure that we gave you some information today. So hello, everybody. Thank you guys so much. Happy birthday, Elizabeth. Yeah, thank you so much for spending your birthday with us. That's great news. And hello, Miss Betty. Yes, it's been a while, and sorry. We are, as we are moving out of pandemic mode, it's. I think our lives are starting to pick up. Certainly, Doc Griggs's live certainly has been picking up quite a bit, and I think that it's been harder and harder to get him, but he said he may be jumping on. He is working on some of our animation stuff. So I know that he got an offer he could not resist in terms of helping to get our animation out there. So that's really good news. So I'm just going to jump into stories right now. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to jump in. Today is Friday. As you guys know, on Friday, it have a beverage day. Today, this is because of my this gluten intolerance thing that I developed not too long ago. Well, probably has had it for a long time, but I've stopped eating gluten or drinking gluten. So now my nutritionist has me drinking these ciders. So now I drink cider. So this is an Angry Orchard hard cider. Liana just got these for me. So we're looking for a cider that actually is really good and that would go well with me, and because no longer drink beer, which is fine. I was never actually a big beer drinker anyway. But so I am drinking an Angry Orchard hard cider. If you do drink alcohol, if you don't drink alcohol, whatever it is that you do drink, maybe you just bring it to the table today, and let's all have a cheers for it being Friday. And happy birthday again to Elizabeth. The raspberry woodchuck cider. All right, we will. Liana's been noting all of these and and bringing them home because apparently I have been poisoning myself for the past 5 years with gluten, and especially when you're a vegetarian. Liana introduced me to all of these vegetarian options and protein options, and they were all these what we now refer to them as gluten bombs. And so, yes, to a large degree, I think I've been polluting my body, and now I feel great. This has been now, I think, month and a half, 2 months I've been on gluten-free, so it's been awesome. Hello, Kevin Caldwell. How are you? So let's go ahead and get started. Again, Doc Griggs may or may not be on the show today, but I, again, have enough material that I think I should be able to get by. If anybody, again, is interested in jumping on, I'm happy to send you the link and happy to have you guys on board as, like I said before, we do this show together. So I'm going to be on the presentation side, and I will every once in a while jump back into the into the mode where I can see your guys' comments. So if you do have comments and I don't address it right away, it's just because I'm in the presentation mode and I can't see the comments in presentation mode. So with that being said, let's go ahead and just jump right to it. Data from Hopkins shows an average daily COVID cases in the U.S. now are at less than half the level recorded at the start of May. Wow. Think about that. Think about that a year ago, right? We were talking about flattening the curve, and we did anything but flatten the curve. The curve got huge. But a year later, we are now back to where we were in May when we were in lockdown, which is pretty incredible. Let's see. The country's seeing an average of 23,407 new infections per day over the past week, and the U.S. reports an average of 1.7 million daily vaccinations, and nearly 50% of the population receive one or more doses. Hey, guys, I got to let my cat in. Hang on one second. Sorry, guys. She's been outdoors for all this time, and she just kind of came up, so I'm sure she's probably really hot. I'm sorry. All right, so Melbourne, Australia was set to enter its fourth lockdown yesterday as concerns grow over rapid spread of infections from a variant. So this one will be 7 days. So we are starting to see some examples of variants starting to emerge. So I often say that we're kind of the curve, we are rounding the curve with this epidemic. I do see that there is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, but one thing that we do need to recognize is that variants are still out there, and we are going to see more of these variants. We are going to see these variants emerge. So I know that it feels really nice to be out there, to think that I know that this group doesn't. I'm not saying that you all you wouldn't be watching this show if you were the types that would be frolicking or kind of thinking that life goes back to normal again. And so the point here, though, is that we do need to recognize that variants are here. That variants will continue to be here, and with the variants lab that we're setting up here in New Orleans, we'll be able to kind of literally micro manage our own microbiology, our own viral microbiology here specifically. So we'll be able to get a good idea of what variants are doing and what they aren't doing, and so what's happening in Australia is a great example of the fact that variants are happening, and we still don't know what's going on in the Seychelles as well. If anyone knows what's happening in Seychelles, we'd definitely love to know. All right, so moving to California, incentives continue. California is giving away the country's largest pot of vaccine prize, $116 million to get more people inoculated. That's amazing. The prize includes $1.5 million for each 10 Californians. And yes, those who've already gotten partial or fully vaccinated are eligible. So that's amazing. What a great story. What we have seen is that initiatives, that's not the word I'm looking for, incentives, sorry. Incentives work. We have seen that these incentives are incredibly powerful. They are very, very motivating. And I don't know if you guys saw that 11-year-old, no, she was an 18-year-old. No, 21-year-old. I forget. Sorry. I don't know why I'm all over the place. This 21-year-old won $1 million from Ohio. She was one of the 5 winners from being vaccinated. So these incentives work, and I fully support them and think that they are great. All right, on to some some news that's a little hard to read, but we just need to read it because it's real. Lisa Shaw, news presenter for BBC Newcastle, which I think is probably New Zealand, died at 44 after being treated for blood clots and bleeding after getting the AstraZeneca shot. But now German scientists think that they know more about these blood clots issues. The cold virus is used by some vaccines to insert the spike protein of COVID-19 into the nucleus of the cell can, in some cases, cause bits of the proteins to enter the nucleus and break up. These fragments enter the bloodstream and cause clotting. The European Medicines Agency said they know about 169 such cases after 34 million doses. So let me explain to you what that medical mumbo jumbo was. So essentially, what they're saying is that because these vaccines are again, they deliver spike proteins, or they're delivering the code to create spike proteins. Now, because and they're using something called an adenovirus. An adenovirus is an old. It's not old. The technology is old. There's a lot of adenoviral vaccines that are out there, and basically what they do is they take one of these viruses that use the adenovirus, which is, this is a common cold. We've all had adenovirus common colds before, except they take out the part that causes the symptoms that cause the common cold. And what they keep in is the part that is able to get the virus into the nucleus of the cell. The nucleus of the cell is kind of like the brain of the cell, and that's where the DNA is. And what the adenovirus does is it brings the DNA code that codes for the spike protein into the nucleus. It gets converted to mRNA, and then it leaves the nucleus, and then it goes to the ribosome. And once it goes to the ribosome, it kicks out spike proteins. Okay, so then the mRNA vaccines work just by bypassing that whole nucleus element in the first place. And so and that's why the mRNA vaccines are good, because they never actually enter a cell's nucleus to begin with. So what they're saying is that the reason why we're seeing some of this clotting is largely due to the fact that once the adenovirus gets into the nucleus, in some cases, what they're seeing is that some bits of proteins from the virus enter the nucleus and they break up, and those fragments, once they're broken up, then create a cascade that leads to clotting and bleeding. And so we may now have a rationale as to how people are getting these clotting issues. So it's a really important story, and that's something we'll continue to follow. Elizabeth asks here, I've heard of people going to get a third dose by scheduling a first dose, canceling the second dose as their own form of booster. Canceling the second as their own form of getting a booster. So is what you're saying then that they are extending the amount of time between the two injections? So instead of getting it on like 28 days from Moderna, they're getting it like 48 days. Is that what you're saying? Because there is research that shows that people who do get it further apart than what has originally recommended, they do have higher antibody titers. And so if that's the case, then those are some pretty smart people. And if that's the reason why they're doing it, that's pretty remarkable, because that would be people who are definitely following the science and recognizing that's a good way to get it. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. It's not, we stick with the FDA. Whatever the FDA says, we stick to. I'm a company man when it comes to stuff like that. But that's largely due to the fact that those are the public health regulators. That's based on the research that was shown, and I don't recommend deviating at all. No, they're getting their first two doses, and I see, they're getting a third. Canceling the second. So they get, really? Huh. There was giving people a bunch of credit. We have no idea what it's like to get three injections. The other thing too is pretty remarkable. We can't even get people to get any injection for a shot, and now you get people who are trying to get 3 of them. That's pretty remarkable. I don't even know what to think about that. I think it's a little zany. Okay. And then here from the the irony department. For over a year, we've been on pins and needles about a virus that attacks the respiratory system and could kill us. But new research shows that in 2019, smoking killed almost 8 million people. Wow. And more people started smoking, an all-time high of 1.1 billion people. It's mostly young people who are picking it up. 89% of new smokers were addicted by the time they were 25. Wow. All right. Coming to us from Europe, France is imposing a mandatory quarantine on visitors from Britain to slow the spread of the variant that emerged out of India. Germany has stricter limits on people coming in from UK as well. Here's a really interesting story. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky said she's relying on a study in the top infectious disease journal when she said that outdoor transmission accounted for less than 10% of cases. Now the New York Times reports that a co-author of the study said that was misleading because the actual number is far less, probably substantially less than 1%. Oh my goodness. Again, I've asked this question once, I've asked it a million times. What is happening to the CDC? Why are they getting everything wrong? It just seems like every step of the way, they are just flubbing it. One case after the other, after the other, after the other. And this is just a great, great example of that. How do you mistake 10% with 1%? And this is something that we've been talking a lot about how the CDC are flubbing and massively flubbing as well. Yes, I will definitely share the screen. I didn't know if you guys wanted to see all the words or not, but if you guys want to see it, happy to. All right, let's see. There's seemingly a news story every time a breakthrough infection occurs in someone who's been fully vaccinated. It seems like breakthroughs are happening a lot, but a new CDC report says that's incredibly rare. How rare? It's estimated that infections may occur in 0.1% of all fully vaccinated people, and only 10% of that 0.1% require hospitalizations. So again, another great example of how effective these vaccines are. Incredibly potent, incredibly effective, and again, we've never seen anything like that before in terms of how potent they are. So Tamiko says, did you hear about Japan? We are in emergency until the 20th of June. Yeah, Tamiko, I would also love to hear about, and if you know anybody, or if you yourself want to jump on and talk to us about what's happening with the Olympics in Japan. I know that I am concerned with the idea that we may have a massive super spreading event with respect to what could potentially happen in Japan. And so I hope you guys are safe. I know that the people of Japan, my understanding, the government of Japan do not want the Olympics to continue on. But interestingly enough, they can't actually stop the Olympics from occurring. Only the IOC can, the International, I don't know what the O stands for, committee. Oh, duh. The International Olympic Committee. This is what happens when you're live and you're unprompted. I knew what the IOC stood for. I appreciate you guys sticking with me. But sorry, does ask Tamiko what happened. I think that there's just been an uptick in cases, and I'm not 100% sure why. All right, so moving on. Let's see, where are we? Yeah, so the vaccines are really, really tremendous. Researchers announced that an average of 15% of Brazil citizens have COVID-19 antibodies. That research was done at the beginning of the vaccine rollout when less than 1% had gotten even one dose. The presence of those antibodies suggests that people will likely be infected at some point and may at least have some immunity. So that's good. This is a story that I'm not really 100% sure what I think about it. Probably not a good idea to censor theories about how the pandemic started long before facts have been established. But that's what Facebook did, deeming any mention of the possibility of a virus leaking from Wuhan lab as conspiratorial misinformation. I thought that too. We will talk a little bit more about the lab in a moment, but Facebook removed, blocked, and banned such content. It has now reversed that policy as Republicans and Democrats alike call for more scrutiny into the origins of COVID-19. So we are going to look at a story in a moment about where we are with that and how we got there. I think it's important for us to recognize that. We've talked about how and I'm being asked this question a lot. Could there have been a leak from a lab? I don't think that this was done intentionally. I think we talked about that this is not necessarily quote unquote man-made. This was not weaponized, what have you. But could there have been a breach of protocols, or could the virus have been more infectious than the protocols that they had established for it? They just didn't have the right protocols for the infectiousness of the virus? And I think the answer, we can't say no. Let's put it that way. It's impossible to say no. I think it would be journalistically, ethically, medically. We can't. I think we're obligated to look into it, and I think at this point, I think it's a fair thing to do. So that's a good point, Angela. Yes, indeed. And so I think that's where that there could have been, quote unquote, like most things, it may not necessarily be the crime, quote unquote, not that this was a crime, but the cover up is where, things happen. So yes, the U.S. does financially support the Institute of Virology at Wuhan, what people refer to as the Wuhan lab. So could there have been an issue where people have financial interests, grants, what have you, and they are looking at coronaviruses and they're trying to determine and they're studying these coronaviruses in pure scientific manners? Yes, I mean, if you think about it, we've had 3 major coronavirus outbreaks this century alone, right? SARS-CoV-1, we had the MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome is also a coronavirus, and then, now we have SARS-CoV-2. So I think it's worth looking into these labs. I think it's worth it. I don't see any reason why not to, right? This is the only thing from Ronald Reagan I ever quote. I think he was a horrible person. I think he put our country into a terrible path. But I will say this, trust but verify. I think it's fair that we trust and verify. Let's trust, but let's also verify. I think that's a fair thing to do. And all we can do is speculate since the Chinese government isn't cooperating. I don't know enough to say that. Fetty, that's hard for me to kind of comment on that. I would imagine there's probably going to be a lack of cooperation, but I think that it is fair to go into Wuhan and to investigate it. I do, and I think that's what's likely going to happen as well. All right, so let's move to the New York Times. As cases wane, U.S. looks forward to a more normal summer. Americans are preparing for a weekend that would have been unmanageable last year, and a new poll offered hope that at least 70% of adults could be vaccinated by July 4th. That's remarkable. I think about that. Think about where we were last Memorial Day. The idea of having a Memorial Day seemed unbelievable, but here we are on the cusp of a Memorial Day weekend. I know that here in New Orleans, it's going to be probably packed. The weather, I can't even determine what the weather is because I never look, but let me look at my calendar real quickly because my calendar tells me looks like there's going to probably be some showers tomorrow and some cloudy but sunny days for the next couple of days. But regardless, it is beautiful. And the idea that we're able to get out and be in rooms with people who are also vaccinated and be in rooms with people unmasked, I think is really incredible. And really does speak to the amazing power of those vaccines. Elizabeth says whether it escaped from a lab or started in a market doesn't matter. It's here and got to deal with it. But they should. Yes, I 100% agree with you. 100%. I don't disagree with the thing you said. The sentiment is 100% there. I agree. But the thing is, though, the one place that I would say is that and I understand that you're saying we do have to investigate 100%, but we need to investigate because if we do find that there was a leak from a lab, then we need better protocols to prevent this from happening again. The other thing is that I fear what could potentially happen if people recognize that this was a leak that occurred. That could that shut down scientific research, virology type of research, or what have you. And so I'm very, very, very concerned about that as well. Okay, I appreciate that. All right, so some quick headlines. The U.S. heads into another pandemic summer, but this time with optimism. Here you go, Tamika. Japan extends a state of emergency until 1 month before the Olympics. It's unbelievable. My understanding, and Tamika, correct me if I'm wrong here, that It's going to be close. It's going to be a close Olympics, so it's going to be 100% televised. But you are going to get people from all over the world in the form of athletes that are coming to Japan. But there is no requirement that they are vaccinated. So that's number one. And two, it's also that they're likely going to be pulling from other countries, or they're pulling, athletes are coming from countries that don't even have access to vaccines at this point. So there will be no vaccinations, which is crazy here. And to even think about it, let's see. Let's see. Arduin says, I'm jealous. Here in the Netherlands, we're not quite there yet. Rooting for you guys. Thank you. All the way from the Netherlands. We love that. Thank you so much for being part of our family and for being and tuning in from the NoiseFilter YouTube page. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that. And welcome to COVID NoiseFilter. We do this show Monday, Wednesday, Fridays from 4 to 5 Central Standard Time. I can't even begin to guesstimate what time it is right now in Holland or the Netherlands. But welcome again. We'd love to have you as part of our ongoing family that we have here. All right. So where are we? Only the participants is supposed to get it. Yeah, but I heard, Tamiko, I heard that that because these athletes are coming from all over the world, there's no way to judge that some of these countries haven't been vaccinating, or there is just no, I think that they need to be vaccinating their athletes. I mean, this is crazy to be sending a bunch of unvaccinated people into what would essentially amount to be what do they call it? Olympic City or athlete, the village, Olympic Village, where all the athletes stay. To me, that just seems crazy. So, and I would, again, Tamika, would love to hear yours, or if you know somebody who has strong opinions about Olympics in Japan, we would love to have them on the show. Yes, it's 6:35 a.m. In Japan. So, first of all, good morning. Thank you for having and watching the show with us, Tamiko. It's always fun to hear about you in Japan. Yes. Anyway, thank you. It's 11:30 in the Netherlands. I love it. I should hope they do rigorous testing so those athletes. I don't know. I think they are. I don't even. Yeah, you know what? I hope that they're tested before they go. But even still, we've seen that testing protocols do not work, and they have not worked at all. So, all right, let me continue. The time is just slipping by. All right, I agree. That's what the locals are saying. They're very scared here. Yes. That's what I hear, and I hear that the government of Japan cannot shut down the Olympics. It's unbelievable. Only the IOC can, and so I hope that we're able to. The IOC recognizes that this is going to be a super spreading event, and it's also going to go down in history as being remembered as a potential terrible super spreading event. Some big news is looking at the White House. They said intelligence officials told the White House that there was unexamined evidence about the virus's origins. I'm eager to see what that is. Once a moonshot, 70% of COVID vaccination may be in reach, which is unbelievable. The UK approved Johnson & Johnson. Think about this story. The Idaho governor, the Idaho lieutenant governor put a ban on mask mandates, and now the Idaho governor repeals that ban on mask mandates. What a bunch of goofballs. I mean, that is the epitome of just irresponsible. I mean, the boss goes away and you're going to just make your own laws. And as you see, she had it in these like, whereas this and whereas that, it was all formally done. It was unbelievable and crazy that they would do something like that. All right, let's see. Ira, it's nice to see you again. I don't think most realize that America has access to vaccinations, that to a degree that nowhere else in the first world currently enjoys. Yes, 100%. That speaks to, some people who are making the argument that we should not be vaccinating under 16-year-olds at this point. We should not be looking to vaccinate children we should take our vaccines and vaccinate the rest of the world who's having trouble getting vaccines in the first place. And to a certain degree, I would largely agree with something like that. I think at this point, it is a point of privilege that we are able to vaccinate children. And I think that what we should be focusing on is vaccinating the globe. And so let's move on. And India is going to obtain 15 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine. That sounds like a lot. Don't be fooled. That's really only 25 million doses, and that's in a country with 1.4 billion people. So that is not very much. Elizabeth says we sent vaccines to Canada that we weren't using. Yeah, we need to be sending vaccines around the world. I strongly believe that. Okay, so just some quick stories here. I just wanted to go over here. I think I glossed over a quick second, but I did want to kind of go back to it and say that we now recognize that the risk of venous thromboembolism is doubled, and the risk for a cerebral venous thrombosis. So these are clots. So so either a clot in the what's the word I'm looking for, in your veins, to the non-arterial blood, venous blood, there's an increased risk. So usually those in the legs or in the lungs or in the brain. There's 20-fold elevated in the vaccinated cohort in Denmark and Norway. So what this study does show, it confirms that there is indeed an excess risk for thrombotic events among the AstraZeneca vaccine, especially for cerebral venous thrombosis. The vaccinated cohort consisted mainly of active healthcare and social service workers with low prevalence of severe comorbidities. These reported risk ratios and excess adverse events may represent underestimates. So I think, the jury's out. I think we can definitively say that, yes, indeed, we do recognize that we are recognizing that the AstraZeneca vaccine does cause these venous thromboembolic events. And at the top of the show, we did talk about how and why that's the case. And that's very likely due to the fact that an adenovirus vector gets into the nucleus of a cell. There's some proteins that are thought to get into the nucleus as well when the adenovirus does. And those proteins kick off a cascade that ultimately leads to clotting and to bleeding as well. So Layla says, what are your thoughts on the President Fauci talking about origin of the virus? We had talked about it a little bit. Layla, we're going to get to it in a minute. I've talked about it several times. In short, I think that this is a good thing, and I'm completely supportive of it. I think if you go back and look through the comments here, Layla, you'll find that you'll see some of those comments there. All right. So a second presentation of COVID-19 due to non-variant concerns, a non-variant of concern strain. So what is this saying? So 4 workers in Brazil were reinfected with the original SARS-CoV-2 virus. So what this is saying, that these are not necessarily variants, that these are people who are getting infected with non-variant strains, and we are seeing that reinfection is possible. I can't remember if we talked about these on Monday or not. I think I talked to them very quickly, but I do want to reiterate that COVID-19 vaccines, the mRNA vaccines at least, do appear to be safe during pregnancy, which is great news. By small sample size and reliance on volunteer reporting, inclusion of only a small percentage of vaccinated pregnant individuals, the data does provide reassuring evidence that both current mRNA vaccines are safe and tolerated during pregnancy. Here, Dr. Sachs gave us a great breakdown as to why the Yankees who were vaccinated did get COVID-19 nonetheless. And so he broke it down in a way that I thought was really quite smart. So he says here, the source of infection was a highly contagious person. The outbreak likely followed the over-dispersion model of SARS-CoV-2. In other words, that there could have been a super spreader that could have potentially done that. We don't know this 100%, but it could have been a very highly contagious person that managed to spread that their version of the virus and in a manner that overwhelmed the immune system. So it could have been. It could be that a more transmissible or resistant virus likely caused the outbreak. We do know that because they all got Johnson & Johnson, that they don't necessarily do well with some of the variants that emerged out of South Africa, especially. So it could be something along those lines. The vaccine storage, cold chain, and lot numbers need to be checked. Of course, there could have been a breakdown that maybe the vaccine that they got maybe was faulty because of cold chain errors that could happen. The vaccine is not 100% effective, right? We do know that. It's 60 to 70% effective in preventing symptomatic disease, but again, they're not 100% effective. And so then he gives a great analogy here. He says in a really, really nice metaphor, he says the vaccines are like this. Cases that would have been hospitalizations now become colds, and symptomatic cases become asymptomatic. Most infections are avoided entirely. The vaccine works like a strong headwind from the outfield, turning homers into doubles and doubles into harmless flyouts. So I think that's a great analogy. It's a baseball metaphor, and I think that works very nicely. And so, yeah, so there we go. So I think we have some comments here. Do you think it's safe to take a water aerobics class? If it's outside, yes. If it's inside, technically the CDC would tell you yes. I possibly would be a little bit cautious. I would not go indoors where people are breathing hard. That's just my own opinion. Here, Ardoin says they just approved allowing people to get another vaccine if they refused because they specifically didn't want AstraZeneca. That's great. Which one are they looking for? Are you guys looking for the mRNA vaccines? If so, that would be awesome because I'm a huge fan of those vaccines, obviously. Here we got 60 million doses of AstraZeneca is still being warehoused, waiting for approval. Can those doses go bad? I imagine they probably can. I don't know what the how long you can have them for, but I imagine they probably can. And here Kim says yes, it's outside. So that's great news. So I think in that case, I think that doing a water aerobics class is definitely a doable thing. All right. It's Friday, everybody. So I get to enjoy my beverage. All right. Do neutralizing antibody titers foretell immune protection against COVID-19? So this is an interesting study. And basically what they did is they did what's called an environmental study where they bring different studies. They collect data from different studies. So it's different from a meta-analysis. They take data and they pick data from different studies. And what they found was that neutralizing antibody titers were highly correlated with vaccine efficacy. So what that may now be is a surrogate marker. So there may be a way to be able to use a neutralizing antibody titer. Or rather a way for us to be able to use, neutralizing antibody titer to determine how much of a protective immunity of COVID-19 people may have. And that will help determine how successful vaccines and immunotherapies are. So I know it's a little in the weeds of science, but essentially what we are able to do and what this study acknowledges is that we're able to better determine how protective you may be as a result of the vaccine. Here, I just wanted to go over this story one more time. Looking at mask use and ventilation improvements were very, very significant. And I think I skipped by this last time. I'll skip by it now. HIPAA, there is no violation of HIPAA if you're asking about vaccination status. A couple other really good stories we had talked about initially was, does vitamin D Does vitamin D, having low vitamin D, predispose you to having COVID-19? The answer, I think, now is pretty much set as no. The risk for infection was not higher for lower levels of vitamin D, either mild or moderate. And so this really should put to rest whether vitamin D supplementation is actually helpful or not. This is a great story that was out of the Annals of Internal Medicine, looking at vaccines are helpful for people who have long or post-COVID syndrome, what people refer to as long COVID or long haulers. And essentially what they did is what they found was they took 44 people who received a single dose. And what they found was that about a month post-vaccination, a quarter of the patients reported improved symptoms. Quality of life and mental well-being did not worsen after vaccinations. And similar to the vaccinated, many reported transient fevers, which we would expect, aches and headaches. So the findings do provide some reassurance to those that are hesitant about vaccine due to persistent symptoms. That said, symptom improvement could have been all or in part due to the passing of time. That's true. But the bottom line, and I think what's important, is that I think what we are seeing is the vaccine does help people. And I think that's really incredibly important. All right. Some really quick tweets. Anti-vaccine activists are using government data based on side effects to scare the public. This is, of course, offensive on so many levels. And again, this is another, just people who are just spreading disinformation, and it's terrible at best. COVID-19 vaccine is not causing heart dysfunction in kids. The virus itself is. So we're seeing a lot of these kids that are getting vaccinated, and they're being told that they have a myocarditis. And what they're arguing here is that it could be that that these kids are actually infected with the virus, and that it's the virus that's causing the myocarditis, because we do know that viruses do cause they're what are called cardiac tropic. In other words, that the virus itself wants to latch onto the heart, and it gets to the heart muscle. When it does that, it kills the heart muscle, and that's something called myocarditis. Here's a story looking at incentives for immunity that we had talked about at some length as well. A story looking at COVID-19 vaccine, 100% effective in teens in terms of preventing a severe illness as well. All right, so this was the story that I alluded to. I think I have time to go over this, and then I'll go over and start to get into the numbers. How much time do we have? Oh, yeah, we've got about 40 minutes. I'll get to your questions in one quick second. All right, so here is basically a really quick story from NPR, just really looking at where did COVID-19 come from, and what led President Biden to want to investigate it. So President Biden wants the intelligence community to figure out where did COVID-19 come from. The most common answer for any virus would be that it developed in animals and spread to human, but the presence of a high-tech lab in Wuhan, China has triggered questions for more than a year. Wuhan is where the virus was first detected. The discovery of additional information about the lab led the president to ask for more answers within 3 months. So they are looking and talking to a White House correspondent. And the question is this a major change for administration? Yes, it's definitely a shift in the message. Until now, they backed the idea of a U.S. investigation instead of focusing on the need for WHO. But yesterday, we learned for the first time in the White House, back in March, President Biden had asked his advisors and intelligence community to dig into the origins of COVID. They quote coalesced likely behind two likely scenarios: animals or an accident from the leak of the Institute of Virology. So yesterday, I don't know if you guys heard the White House briefing. But President Biden said he's asking for agencies to keep digging to get closer to a definitive conclusion within 90 days. So what essentially happened? When President Trump and his supporters were deflecting blame and accusing China of releasing COVID as a weapon, there had been such a huge backlash for it. And then a very famous virologist, Stephen Morrison at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, says the lab leak theory was initially associated with China bashing. It got jumbled up with more of the more crazy aspects of Trump. Yes, indeed. But other coronaviruses like SARS and MERS that both came from an animal to human pathway. So there is some reason for scientists learning that. But then late last year, some credible scientists started to say that the lab escape theory deserved another look. And then the WHO went to Wuhan earlier this year and tried to investigate and didn't get real cooperation and transparency. And Morrison told me that fueled this push for more study. So, I think it is important again, and I think it's worth reiterating that we're not, there is no kind of point for us to say that there is or isn't a leak. I think that it does make sense for us to actually see if a leak actually, could there have been a leak? Was there a violation in protocol, or were there not the right protocols in place? And I think it's important to do that. I don't know if there's been cases of reinfection after Pfizer. I haven't drilled down to that level of detail. Elizabeth says 2 weeks after the first dose, some symptoms lessened, and 2 weeks after the second dose, it greatly improved and the headaches went away. That's great. We love hearing that, Elizabeth. I'm so happy that you're doing better. Let's see. Ardoin says we vaccinate AstraZeneca to people 56 and above. We also have Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson. Not sure who's going to get what vaccine. I'm hoping for Pfizer for me. My age group is not up yet. So that's great. So let me break that down. AstraZeneca for people who are over the age of 56 is because these clots were happening in women under the age of 50 or so. The Pfizer, Moderna are obviously the mRNA vaccines, and Johnson is also like the AstraZeneca adenoviral vector. So, again, all the vaccines are great. I do agree if it's possible for you to get mRNA vaccine. So the Pfizer or the Moderna, I think that's not a bad thing to consider. Elizabeth says, I'm still having exhaustion, brain fog, pain, but working on that. That's great. I'm just super happy to hear that, and we hope that you get better very, 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 very soon, obviously. I'm going to go ahead and just skip to the numbers and see if we can kind of get that going here. There's a couple other stories that if I have time for, I will head back to say. I will say real quickly, I do want to talk about where are we? We still have a few more minutes. Just where we are with New Orleans, City of New Orleans, phase 3. So while gathering size limits for most events, so this is effective on today, 6 a.m. on Friday. Most events will remain 250 indoors, 500 outdoors. Pathway for larger events will now be available. Larger indoor events will now be allowed to occur with one of the following options: 50% capacity without mass, 100% capacity with mass, 100% capacity without mass if individuals provide proof of vaccination. So seeing that even here in New Orleans, we are starting to open up significantly. Large outdoor events will be allowed to occur with one of the following options: 75% capacity without mass, 100% capacity with mass, 100% capacity without mass if proof of vaccinations. So what they're doing here is a phased in either with masking and or distancing. And so businesses can go back to quote unquote normal for themselves at 100% capacity, but either having VAS or having proof of vaccination. Remember, in Louisiana, your Louisiana wallet, which I highly recommend you get. I don't even actually walk around with a wallet anymore. I have everything that I need just on my phone, both including ability to pay at a store if I am getting something at a store, grocery or what have you, and also my ID as well. And in the Louisiana wallet, you will find that there is a vaccination COVID tab at the very bottom of your wallet. Other things to consider: gyms are now 100%. No more times for alcohol sales. And minor changes for restaurants and bars, removing the 6-foot table spacing, which is all right. here we are. We are rounding the corner, as we say here, which is pretty remarkable. And I can't even believe that's where we are. All right, let's go. I got 10 minutes. Let's do the numbers real quick. Where are we? 169, almost 160, almost 170 million. Certainly when we come back on Monday, we'll have exceeded 170 million global cases. Number of deaths are 3.5 million. Total cases are 537,621. That was last night. Last 24 hours, and new deaths are 11,726. That's 8 people died per minute in the past 24 hours. All right. So what does it look like globally? So obviously this went down. It went back up with this fall possible P1 and B1617 variants. But what is that? I'm wondering what that is right there. That I saw that this morning and I was like, what does that mean? So I know I don't like to follow the numbers like minute by minute, but it is a concern. So now South America has the highest rate of new infections. Uruguay, Argentina, Paraguay, Colombia, and Chile. We'll show that as well. India has reported an average number of more than 4,000 deaths per day, and more than 1.7 billion vaccine doses have been administered worldwide. So just really unbelievable what we are seeing. And I'll show you some of that as well. You can see mortality, thankfully, is going down as well. But you can see, look at South America, man. That P1 and P2 variant is really something else. You can really see a tremendous number of cases. Argentina is just on fire with cases, and it's just unbelievable. And so is Uruguay right there. So we and then Costa Rica as well right here. So we'll definitely continue to watch what's happening here as well. And you can see we've been following Sweden. Sweden has gotten a lot better. So it looks like they went through another peak themselves. Let's see, looking at vaccination rates globally, it's really remarkable that you have a country like Chile and Argentina, both very, very well vaccinated countries, but you are still seeing a high rates of cases there. So for me, that's a concern. That's a concern for me that that there could be variants and that there's probably breakthrough infections. And so that's something I'm sure we'll probably hear about at some point. And if I do see stories like that, I will bring it to your attention. Like I was saying, we are very well vaccinated here in the U.S., and I'll show you some more data on that. We are seeing more countries in Africa that are now starting to get vaccinated as well. And as you know, I'm a first-generation American. My family's from Morocco, and so I've been following what Morocco has been doing, obviously. And you can see that Morocco, which I oftentimes refer to as just Europe light, you can see how close it is to Spain and Portugal. But we are seeing a nice number of vaccines that are being delivered there as well. So biggest vaccine campaign in the world, 1.8 billion doses have been administered across 176 countries. So that's about almost 31 million doses a day. Now, initially, that would make you go, oh my goodness, that's almost 2 billion doses with people being like 7.5 billion people. But remember, these are also 2-dose vaccines. So it's a little disheartening. I was a little heartened initially when I saw that, and I remembered that. So looking at the actual number of just gross doses that are given daily, well, I think is an interesting metric. These are not given daily. My apologies. These are total administered. So about 584 million in China, 291 million in the U.S., India, 201 million as well, and still less than 2% of their country is vaccinated. And Brazil, very, very well vaccinated, but you can see, a huge outbreak happening there. And this is a graph looking at continents, and the continents that have what are we looking at? Vaccine distribution. You can see, of course, Africa is just hardly anything in Africa. Asia, Europe, North America, and South America. Asia, very, very well represented. Europe moderately represented, and North America, as no surprise, well represented. And I wish that we could take a lot of this stuff and really provide it for the African continent, because that's just the right thing to do. A rising tide lifts all ships. All right. Let's see, where are we? I got 6 minutes, so let me plow through this. U.S. 34 million cases, 608,000, almost 609,000 deaths. New cases are 24,393. Deaths are 669. You can see that the cases in the U.S. Per 7 days are dropping precipitously, but we've been following that for some time now. Cases have fallen over the course of 7 days by about 24%. New daily reported are 10.5%, and COVID-related hospitalizations fell 11.4%. Here, here we can see our per 100,000 cases here in the U.S. is 44. So really fallen significantly, and you can see that very, very nicely here. I mean, look where we are. We haven't seen these level of cases, and this is unbelievable. Where we are. I mean, you just take a look, and just the number of cases have fallen significantly. So hospitalizations gone down, deaths have gone down as well. 40% of the country is fully vaccinated. 50% at least have one dose, which is amazing. So the country's averaging about 30,000 cases a day, the fewest in about 11 months. Deaths are at their lowest. Nearly 2 in 5 people in the U.S. are fully vaccinated, and no state is seeing a major increase in new cases, and many have seen declines about 40% or more in the past 2 weeks. Pretty cool. All right, real quickly on variants. I don't think we really know anything more, but B117 is throughout the country. We're seeing more of P1 transmit throughout the country, and so is the so-called California variants as well. And here we can see that the variant of that is the most. So what this is looking at is the prevalence of variants that are out in circulating in the U.S. And holy smoke, look at B117. That is a huge amount. This one that is in yellow or gold here, that used to be what we refer to as the Wuhan virus, right? Or the not necessarily the Wuhan virus, the strain that emerged out of Wuhan. And somebody else corrected me on that when I referred to it as the Wuhan virus, because that was used in the past. And it still is as a racist trope. And so when I refer to it as Wuhan virus, I actually mean to say the strain that emerged out of Wuhan. So I'm glad I caught myself there. So the strain that emerged out of Wuhan, you can see was the dominant strain, but you can see now that it is pushed down to almost nothing, and that what we really have here is B117, and then P1 here is what's in orange, and then the so-called California strains as well. So I want to take a moment to thank our funders here who have made this show possible. Thank you so much to South Central ATC. In Louisiana, 470,685 cases. Deaths are 10,576. You can see that the number of cases in the last 24 hours, 467, and deaths are 8. So things are getting a lot better in Louisiana. We finally hit our plateau, 31% vaccinated, at least 35% at least gotten one dose. So that's great news. In terms of where we are per 100,000, we're doing great at 8.8, so that's down. Infection rate is the same. Test positivity rate hasn't really changed. And we are seeing increase in vaccination. In Orleans Parish, we're seeing, again, decrease in cases as well. Infection rate is up just slightly. Test positivity is up just slightly as well. And at least 47% of the cities at least gotten at least one dose of the vaccine. So that speaks to what is happening here with respect to the numbers. And so I just want to say thank you all for being here. We will be back on Monday, and we'll have another show for you guys. You guys have a great. Oh, no, wait a second. Monday's a holiday. I don't think we'll be here for Monday. So we'll definitely be here next Wednesday. You guys have a great holiday weekend. I'll see if Doc Riggs wants to do it. I have a feeling that we're going to probably just be resting, to be honest. But you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for spending your Friday with me. We love you guys as always. You guys are awesome. Please stay safe. And we will see you guys next Wednesday. Peace out, everybody. And remember, health is a